If you've ever talked to ChatGPT about your depression, your divorce, or your company's confidential data, I need you to stop what you're doing and listen to this. Sam Altman just confirmed what we suspected, but hoped wasn't true. Every single ChatGPT conversation that you've ever had could be subpoenaed in court. Today, we're also showing you the new academic AI tools that are actually changing how we do research safely and ethically. Plus, I'll show you the one tool that's actually doing literature reviews right. And it's not what you think. Hey friends, welcome to the AI Academics Podcast. I'm your host, Professor Dr. Leonard Nacke. This is the show where my co-host Vuga Ibrahimov and I geek out about the latest AI developments without getting too scientific. We want to help you get the valuable AI insights and actionable strategies that actually matter. So grab a coffee, tune in, and let's chat about why AI isn't the job-stealing monster that everyone thinks it is. Before we dive in, if you're enjoying the show, make sure to hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so we never have you miss an episode. Now, let's get started. Hey, Vuger, how are you doing?
Hey, Leonard. Fine. Great to be here again, chatting with you. How are you?
It's always good. So this time we pushed ourselves a little bit to get this done in time, and we had some external pressure by announcing it to the newsletter in terms of, okay, everyone tune in with us, but we're super excited for anyone that can find the time and that's actually put that in their schedule to be joining us live here. We've got a couple of interesting news items that we want to discuss and that I'm quite excited about. So first of all, hello to everyone. Thanks so much that you're here with us. If anyone wants to let us know how you're feeling, you can always send us your questions in the chat. We're more than happy to answer them and very excited to talk to you about it. I'm going to leave that ticker in there so that you know if you tune in a little later that you're of course always most welcome to join us here with some questions. All right, so let's see what we got here. One of the big announcements that came during the last week was not this one here. Using ChatGPT as a therapist, as a lot of people are doing this, and we've definitely heard these stories about this as well, that people are turning to ChatGPT as therapeutic mental health help. And Sam Altman has disclosed earlier this week to say that really your chats aren't private. I mean, this really doesn't come as a surprise to anyone working with technology and being aware of, the legal implications of any of the technology use that you have online. And so it shouldn't really come as a surprise as well that these chats that you're doing with ChatGPT are not locked up somewhere. They're not private. So if there's ever a legal warrant, and I mean, you're talking about the United States, right? Like United States, as you know, there's not a lot of legal protection. It's not like it's Europe with GDPR and whatnot. So there is, I think, concern, or the outcry was among people that are putting a lot of their personal life stuff on ChatGPT that, there's real risk that on disclosure, they would have to produce that, right? Like as I say here, if you go and talk to ChatGPT, here's the tweet, I clicked on it. And then if you go talk to ChatGPT about your most sensitive stuff, and then there's a lawsuit, we could be required to produce that. So this is definitely an interesting development that we have here for people using ChatGPT as a therapist. What are your thoughts on that, Booger?
Sure, that's for sure not good. I mean, so this usual patient-doctor confidentiality is not there for sure. We knew it since the beginning, but this confession, it's kind of emboldened what we have thought before.
Yeah.
And it's not only for doctors. I think it goes also for those who are using these kind of tools as a legal consultant, let us say. If you have very confidential, and if you sign, for example, a non-disclosure agreement with the company, but you are uploading documents which could potentially include the business confidential information, the business related confidential information, there I think you have to be careful as well, because in the end, we don't know, we have been always mentioning this, but we don't really know in which hands they can end in as a last resort. And like, we don't know where they are. So, and I don't personally understand if they can deduct, if they can extract this specific, for example, let's say they need to find a specific information about Leonard, about Vugar. If they can do that from the chat, if they can do that, I don't know. But to me, it seems they can.
Well, you're the lawyer, or you have the law experience, right? So like, Is this something that would even fly in the European law? Is this something that is just for our American colleagues? Like,
It's
how
for
difficult would
everyone.
that actually be in a legal case in Europe?
Yeah, I know personally that in many companies here in Germany, also in
Yeah.
European Union, companies banned for their employees to use ChatGPT. You cannot upload
See.
any company related corporate documents to the ChatGPT and ask questions about it.
Mm.
You have multi-million contracts with very confidential information, let's say, on it. You
Yeah.
cannot simply upload it on ChatGPT and ask questions on it. So
That
it's
makes sense.
here usually the privacy laws in Europe, I mean, are more stricter than anywhere else in the world. So with you mentioned this GDPR,
Yeah.
so that's general data protection regulation for those who doesn't know what GDPR means. So, but of course, these kind of tools always try to find the back doors to attract the users, let's say. So this doctor therapy confidentiality is not there, but I automatically always think about those who use this tool as a legal consultant. I think we
Mm.
have to be careful about own sensitive data.
Yeah, for sure. That's
Yes. And we don't know, maybe you are just feeding the specific government agencies about yourself with your very sensitive problems. Maybe ChatGPT,
maybe
not
don't.
maybe, I am sure that whenever needed, the government agency can easily access to any information. But
Yes.
now we have totally different tool which can collect more sensitive information about our lives, even
Mm.
more like the intimate details, even sometimes, because I know specifically the teenagers definitely find ChatGPT, talking to ChatGPT more, lenient, more relief bringing kind of stuff. But at the same time, we have to teach the specifically those who, and also the seniors generation, I would also, because we
Yeah.
don't, yeah, we don't really understand the perils of these kind of tools. And there I think we need urgent public awareness about the drawbacks of these tools.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I think that's definitely something where we have to be careful. But then we also had other developments here. This is one that you shared with me. AI text to speech programs could unlearn how to imitate certain people. Now, this is kind of
Mm.
related to the deepfake stuff that we talked about in one of the last episodes. But I think that's really interesting that, models can be directed so that they can, hide certain voices, even when they're asked for. To me, this is kind of in line with the censoring that's already going on, right? Like there is the stuff that's actually in the model, and then the sort of safeguarding that happens, kind of responsible AI idea, where a lot of safeguarding is happening at the level of a system prompt, and that's quite interesting as well. So I do think, yeah. Did you want to say something about that? I think it's specifically interesting for something like video and voice, where we're seeing the deep fakes and the scams and the disinformation and the harassment that's happening because of these. So it's interesting, this machine unlearning, the opposite of machine learning, essentially.
Exactly, because it's so easy to fake anything, to especially the celebrities.
Yeah.
If you are a celebrity, I think you wouldn't be definitely liking anyone creative video or voice message with your own message, with your own the face. And so
Yeah.
that would be definitely nice. And unlearn, for example, let's say you didn't know the problems. I just want to understand this verb unlearn. What does that
Yeah.
mean? And let's say again back to the legal consulting, or let's say you are using ChatGPT as a therapist. You uploaded a very sensitive document, or you provided the ChatGPT with very sensitive information. Can
Yeah.
you make ChatGPT to forget that forever?
Yeah, that's the question, right?
Yeah, that's the
I don't
question.
think that forever is a big word, right? Like, I don't know if forever is
Yes.
actually possible. It's tricky.
No, I mean, to bring ChatGPT in a time to the back point, like you have never shared that information with ChatGPT. Can
Yeah.
you do that? I think no. So the answer is no,
Yeah.
because what you just feed to this tool, it's there. And I think these companies can access any data, any information that we feed easily, and therefore we always call. Like if you are writing your dissertation, yes, you can use these tools, but never upload any final document or any document at all to this tool, because you never know what you encounter in the end.
It's really interesting. It's part of why we like experimenting with the sandbox and with the AI studio from Google, because again, it's a little bit more removed than the chat interfaces, and this is what a lot of people don't really understand when they're using, or they're just talking about ChatGPT, which, by the way, it's becoming a verb, right? Like it's not Googling anymore, it's did you ChatGPT it? So this is quite interesting for
Exactly.
replacing how to find cool stuff. It's not Googling anymore. I'm sure Google is upset about that. It's now, did you ChatGPT it? And so the interesting thing that's happening, I think, is that for lay users that are just getting started with it, they don't really know that abstraction level or understand that abstraction level yet, that there's always the system prompt, and the system prompt kind of unfolds how everything works that we're seeing, and that's what makes some of that stuff quite interesting. But these system prompts are also at the level of how you're creating some of these companions, and this is quite interesting. I know that you're not the biggest fan of X and Elon anymore, but this was of course a shocker that he did 2 weeks ago. Is kind of diving into this anime thing. I think this is actually super popular in Japan, of course, because there's a lot of adoption of anime, and these kind of virtual characters are really a big thing there for that culture. And so essentially, having these animated characters is big business, right? Like, so this is definitely something where he was thinking, okay, what if you could pick some of these companions and chat with them? And then, of course, the ideas, of course, you get hooked to them. This is quite interesting with the news of, let's see if I can actually find that really quick. Zuckerberg guy, Meta, no, I can't really see it. Oh yeah, this one, the super intelligence idea. So basically, he is promising super intelligence that is kind of the idea. So of course he's poaching people and all that stuff, and he's paying them a lot of money. Some of this guy's, I think, in his 20s. Like, these are really young people that are now making millions of dollars at Meta. So really quite interesting to see what's happening there. But essentially, his ideas as well with his super intelligence thing is kind of in line with what Elon is doing there. This idea that essentially social media, the way it's working right now, will disappear. I mean, one of the things that we've seen already is that social media isn't social anymore. It's an advertising platform, right? Like a lot of us, like kind of what we're doing here, like we're not advertising, but we're inviting you to follow us, to learn from us. And of course, we have products. This is where I hit that button. Where's the button? Hit the button, Tenured. So we have products like this QR code that I'm putting in there. And then, like usually there's something where it's just like, if you like this, then there's also a product attached to it. So that's kind of the way that social media is built and that social media works, where you're following people because they have something interesting to teach you, but you're also kind of in this parasocial spiral where you're trying to build a relationship with people, but it's not the people that are living next door or the people that you're close with, as it used to be on the original Facebook or even like Twitter when it started. It was more the people that are close to you that you're communicating with. And we're kind of seeing a detachment in the last couple of years from that. So social now is more this like one-to-many platform where a couple of creators are building these bigger things that are then like broadcasting. It's more like radio and TV. It's really becoming more like popular media. And if we see anything, it's like YouTube is actually coming for Netflix right now. So YouTube is actually a big competitor of Netflix because a lot more people are just watching YouTube instead. So this is kind of the changing social media landscape. And of course, LinkedIn and other platforms are taking away from people reading books and other stuff. This is part of my motivation why I write about academic writing on LinkedIn every day, is because I really want people to read interesting stuff. And the way to reach them is through these platforms. I could have written a book and then just waited, and in 5 years it would have made its way through there. But now it's basically every day I can help people. It's just a much faster feedback loop. And so anyways, total tangent. What we're moving towards is, or what I think we're moving towards is, we're removing the human from that equation. So all of the people like us that are creating content online, we're probably okay for the next 5-ish years because creator economy is booming and all that stuff. But what Meta and what X actually want is to just automate people like us. Like, they just want to create content that you like, and they just want to AI generate it. Right now, what you see a lot of on LinkedIn is people actually and I'd say this is the majority. This is like 85% of content that I see on LinkedIn, where somebody goes, and I do it myself too, right? Like you go to your custom trained project, and then you have something interesting to say. It's trained on your voice and your tone and whatever, and then you produce that output that you know will work well with the platform, right? And so this is a really interesting change. And what they want to do is they just want to remove us, the creator agents, if you want, from that equation, and just say, what if you could just go directly, to the funky companion that we have for you, and then they create that content that you're interested in. So Facebook of the future, you probably won't follow people. You'll just follow, AI NPCs if you want, and they will provide you with content. I think that's the future that we're headed towards, and that's what Elon and Mark, the two evil twins, sorry guys, are pushing for right now in terms of the development that we're seeing. So it's really quite interesting. Yeah.
And now imagine yourself at the other side of the equation. Like you need a product, you send your AI powered agent to find a product, and that AI powered agent goes to internet, find AI generated products. So in the end, the humans like staying right in the back of everything. I am not sure if I really like to live in that kind of society, but the things are going towards this development, the inclination that I observe that as human beings in the end, but of course that doesn't apply for the real world jobs, that someone, even if let's say you buy something on internet, someone should deliver, and maybe that someone will not be there again because the cars will be automated, AI powered, and that car bring your product. If it is online, yeah, you download it just, but if it is a physical product, and so if everything is done, I think last time someone asked this question, if everything is done by AI, what is there for human beings to do?
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, this is when we discussed the Hinton's interviews as well, the Nobel Prize winner on AI, right? Like, and so there's definitely something that's a little bit scary about that, right? So, and it's interesting here when you see Ilya Sutskever, he always pops up, and I think he's a former postdoc of Geoffrey Hinton, is coming out of that lab. And he was, of course, that was a big thing when he left OpenAI,
Yes.
sort of the ethical voice, right? And the safe voice. And I think people speculated that he had safety concerns about OpenAI's AI technology. And then Meta, now has attempted to buy Safe Super Intelligence, so his new company, but he's kind of pushed back, right? So it's interesting because, again, I don't think these people are interested in safety. They're interested in monetization and like making more money in this thing. And so it's quite interesting. Here's a comment from somebody that we don't have the name of. AI post-Taylorism where humans drink cocktails. So that's quite the future that we're headed towards. But that's kind of the thing. And so for us, of course, the interesting thing was also to try out, as we were talking about these personalities and things and the agents and things that came up, was that there are, of course, also agents, or there are a lot of agents, or there's a lot of talk about agentic AI. And if you were, I'm going to have to switch here my screen share for a hot second. If you were following that, here's ChatGPT. So if you were following that, then you also noticed that inside ChatGPT, you now have agent mode, and you also have study and learn mode. And these are quite interesting. So now agent mode is interesting because, again, we'd have to write like a really proper prompt. But one of the things that, and it gives you suggestions here, is that you can basically send off this agent to do stuff for you. And as that's the case, then it gets really productive when it comes to that. So I think it's like whenever you're off on something where you have to visit a lot of websites and you kind of have to click through a lot of things and synthesize that information, that's really tricky. And so that's when you get an agent. So we could tell our agent to find the arguments for safe super intelligence on the web and structure them by how convincing they are. Now, this is something that you could do with any sort of other thing as well. So we had in the past, we were talking about Perplexity Labs, which is still my go-to. It's kind of a good mix between speed in terms of like how fast you get the results, kind of between 5 to 7 or 10 minutes that you that you get the answer. Now, the way it works with ChatGPT agent is it's got to set up its own sort of agentic environment and then do several things. And this is something we've talked about that Manus and GenSpark are also doing. And so the only thing is, so they're actually late to the game. Yeah, if you look at GenSpark and Manus, they were both earlier and much quicker with this agentic AI. But now it's all integrated in your plan. And as you can see, if I hovered over that, you can't see it anymore. It says you have like, I think 40 agentic things in your plus plan. And again, this is all tied to how much money you're paying for it. The interesting thing is, of course, presentation. As you know, one of the things that made OpenAI so popular was the interface, essentially, right? Like the transformer idea of text prediction and things like that wasn't really new, but it wasn't until they turned it into a chat interface that people were like, oh, this is really cool. And so that's essentially what's happening here. It sets up this environment and then has this nice little animation that you can watch as it's doing all of its agentic things here. And you can see it's reading websites, it's just executing several queries, reading websites and combining that information until it has enough. And of course, there's other ways to make that more effective as well. And we don't necessarily have to, like, I can switch back again, so we don't have to wait until all of this is done. We can check in again at the end of our episode to kind of see how it's doing. But it's definitely one of those interesting things that you can do now. And I think that's something definitely worth exploring. But I'm going to switch over back to my other views. Any thoughts?
And maybe, and definitely useful. But as you said, the Manus was already there, which I said. So that this terminal view, we are what we see. It's kind of, it has a very abstract computer, let's say, running in the background, and you can see what is happening on the screen of it. Manus already did that. But it is also not only, it doesn't work only for the abstract, let's say, search like we did today. You can also, let's say, if you are planning a vacation, you just say, I have this budget, I want to see, let's say, the Greece, please go internet and find the best deals for me on these dates. And so your agent can easily do that, on which you can spend, let's say, 1 hour or 2 hours. It can do that in a couple of minutes. So let's say 20 minutes, 30 minutes, at least half an hour. The maximum, the half an hour. So that's definitely nice. But of course, in the end, you will decide if the results. But to be honest, the results of it, I can personally do better search let's say, as my own agent. I can definitely do.
But are you as fast? It's all about speed,
yes,
right? Like
it's all, yes. It's, if you really, for example, need the academic articles that you need to find, definitely you combine that. So my best recommendation is I think always combine the traditions with the new technological developments. And if you combine both of them, the result will be perfect.
That's a good one. And I do think it does help with these agents. I mean, the big thing when a feature like that is launched is always like figuring out what it can actually do. GenSpark calls this idea of vibe working, just like vibe coding, right? So, and I actually kind of like this moniker because it says, okay, it lets you create slides, it lets you create sheets, which is kind of cool. So you can search stuff on the web, you can put it into structured data. I think that's actually one of the most powerful applications, that you can do a structured browse of the web. You got to be explicit, just like, intern instruction. So this is something where we would need like a more structured prompt, but then you can actually collect that data and have it generate a spreadsheet for you, which is kind of cool. It's really nice at getting a document, something ready for you really quickly. This podcast thing is, of course, taken from Notebook.lam. We chatted about that. Seems like any sort of AI company has this idea of having this podcast thing going on. And I think there's a couple of startups that tried this as well. But if this is the thing, right? Like if you're a startup and if you're like building your idea around this one concept, you just have to have a standalone thing, because otherwise, like, all of these other things will just eat you up because they also have that functionality, which is fun. And then AI chat. So one of the things that I liked here is that I can have AI chat with the O3 Pro model, which otherwise I would pay $200 a month for. So that's nice that they've integrated that. And then, that there's AI image stuff, AI video stuff, of course. And we know with Veo and some of the other models, if you are not living under a rock, you've probably seen these. Let's see if I can actually find this video. Night video of raccoons on trampoline. You might have seen it. This goes viral everywhere, and they've done it. Of course, it's on TikTok. And yeah. So they've done it with all sorts of stuff, and these are like all these AI generated things. That's not a raccoon. That's a deer.
That's deer.
But then we got the raccoons and stuff like that. So definitely. And then I think we had kangaroos somewhere. I don't know if I have the kangaroo somewhere, but this is like a thing, right? Somebody figured it out how to make these things, and then they go viral because people are like, oh my God, like, how is this even a thing? This can't be real, but it looks so real. So it's kind of cool and funny. One of the other things, since we're talking about agents, so Consensus has launched something called Deep Search, which I think is also kind of cool. It's basically trying to get into what Elicit was doing for a long time, which is this automated systematic review stuff where they just generate literature reviews, in this case up to 50 papers, with a more advanced search strategy. So Vugar, what's a question that you were working on in your PhD that you remember?
So I was working with the migration laws of the European Union, but my traditional question for the AI tools I usually ask, what is the impact of the climate change on international migration routes? Or maybe we can
how does climate
impact, let's say,
the effect of,
because in international migration law, also the refugee law, this kind of it's the climate change caused migration is not regulated very well, and we definitely need better regulations for that at international level, regional level, also local level, because the traditional refugee definition doesn't cover the people who are moving because of the climate changes. And that's why I usually test these kind of tools to find for me papers if there's anything, like how the scholars trying to find solutions for this. And I mean legal scholars, but definitely we need better legal instruments to do that.
So this is kind of neat. So if you ever played around with Consensus, you know the consensus meter. So for the consensus meter, you actually need something like this. So they actually suggest,
yes, you have to ask yes or no question.
Yeah, so basically this should already have been a deep search, but they actually said right now I'm in pro search mode. So they said, and again, you get 100 of these, do it as a deep search. So we're going to do this rewritten thing, and then we're going to execute it as a deep search. So deep search is essentially just like a deep research functionality so this was the regular pro search where you're getting your sources pretty quickly and you're getting, is there consensus? What do people think about this question? And then once you execute deep search, then it comes up with a search strategy first. And I think that's kind of the interesting part of it. So it looks at, okay, what are the theories that we have? What are ways that people describe these things? And then once they have that, then they execute the different search terms. In this case, I've excluded preprints because, as you know, there's a lot of preprints out there, and specifically in the scientific databases, we almost have an influx of too many preprints. So ideally, you don't always want to include those. So that's kind of interesting. Oh, there's a question for you, Vugar, while we're waiting for this to come out. I am curious about your data sources, Vugar. Would you like to shed light on that? I don't know what data sources they're referring to here. I don't think Vugar has any secret data sources.
No,
I'm aware.
No.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't have, but the thing is that, as I mentioned, in international, so refugee law, there's a Geneva Convention in law, which is stipulating this refugee stuff. But if the refugees coming to, let's say, to Germany, because of the climate change issues, they do not fall under this traditional internationally accepted refugee status. And this is problematic because they are in reality, they are refugees. They are, let's say, not refugees, but maybe displaced person, let's say.
Yeah.
But I usually test this kind of AI tools with this question to find for me if there are any recent research. But actually, there is projects going on to actually reinvigorate our existing international instruments, the legal instruments, I mean, to cover those who are affected also because of the climate change issues.
Hmm.
And as you said, so with the consensus, so this is one of our favorite tools. And in order to have, let's say, this consensus meter, you have to usually ask yes or no questions. Like we can reformulate the same question, like, does climate change impact the international migration, let's say, routes, or similar questions we can ask. And then the consensus can give us yes or not, and then kind of giving us a little bit data on it as well.
Yeah. I think I scrolled too much while it generated the output. It doesn't like that. I think any AI tool, if you scroll too much while it still does the auto
No.
scrolling, some sort of
Yes.
JavaScript in the background, then it just kind of crashes on you. So then you always just have to hit reload. And it's interesting because usually it's not as clear cut as in this case. In this case, it's basically saying, you know what, climate change and migration law, they don't really jive. There is, at least in the sources, the 19 that is identified here, there is no evidence that climate change is a direct influence on migration law, at least until now, because I guess we're not far into climate change yet, so probably not a lot of studies that have been published. But it's interesting if you see sort of how you would see it in a regular literature review, where you're essentially seeing how the search strategy worked. So it has 942 papers that it initially found, and that matched 19 different consensus searches that it did. Then it did the screening and removed papers that didn't have any abstracts because it, wanted to get the abstracts, and removed any of the duplicates, just like you would do in a regular literature review. And then you had this eligibility screening here, and of course, papers with not low semantic relevance. Again, it does it a little bit differently than your traditional Boolean search, where you would, in a traditional Boolean search, you would find whether or not it meets these specific hard criteria. Here it does semantic relevance because it does a semantic search, so it's a little bit fuzzier, and that also makes it a little bit less rigorous because you can't really pinpoint that as much. And then it selects the top 50 highest quality papers after a final ranking, so removes another 352. This is all sort of black box. So I think we had a question here. No, not this one. If possible, is it enough to make a literature review based on this? I would not recommend to use this as your literature review methodology, because it is not giving you the details that you would need to replicate it, right? Like as soon as you're using something black box, then basically if somebody wanted to replicate it, they would have to pay a chunk of money to do consensus and say, you know what, I have to get the same thing and got to execute it the same way. But what if the algorithms change? So let's say your paper's published now, and 5 years from now, this is all completely different database, different algorithms. This stuff changes so quickly, so it's harder to replicate. So for good science, I don't think it's easy to publish a paper like that. But as we are bringing this up, let me just check my sources.
And Leonard, I also understand the same question in a different way. Maybe he's asking the Tefera, sorry if I misspelled, maybe he's asking if the topic is possible to write a literature review. What do you think?
Oh, if he means the topic,
If the topic you are asking, yes, definitely. This is not the very well researched topic. It's definitely open to write, let's say, dissertation, a master or PhD if you can. So definitely nice topic. But if you are asking in terms of technical stuff, of course, consensus is not enough to do a literature review, because it takes all the articles from Semantic Scholar. It uses the let's say the corpus of the academic articles of the Semantic Scholar, which is limited on, I think, a little bit more than 200 millions. But of course, the vast, let's say, ocean of the academic articles is not limited only with that, because you have to check other sources as well.
So that's one thing, you're missing some of the things. And the other thing is, of course, replicability. But then, and this is interesting. So by the way, I do love how they're presenting stuff though. So like, this is such a sexy application for if you're not a researcher, but if you're a journalist and you're doing just like some basic research for your article, chef's kiss. Like this is the kind of stuff you dream of. I do think there is, or like if you're in high school, right? Like you're just getting started. Like if you're a beginner, I think it's really kind of cool because you're getting kind of these nice things, evidence strength. So it does an evaluation of evidence strength. So if you have read my blog, I don't know if you've done that. Let's just pull that up for you real quick. But you might have missed one of the things I recently wrote about, which is a system tool that helps you separate a real research from academic garbage is kind of how I phrased it. But essentially what you can see here is the evidence pyramid. So this is something that is quite common, that people kind of know, okay, this is how we do evidence, and we have systematic reviews and meta reviews at the top, and then we have, editorials, expert opinions on the bottom. So if you're kind of in the bottom of the pyramid, I think you're perfectly fine with doing something like consensus, and that's actually kind of cool. But there is something called the grade framework, which I linked in my article. So if you go to leonardnacke.com, you read my article, you can find the link there directly, which is the grade system. So the grade system is a way that you can evaluate scientific evidence. And so this is similar to probably what they have in the background here. I don't know if they're using grade or whatever they're using, but you can bet that they've been inspired by these systems, because these are like standardized systems that are out there for evaluating evidence. So it is kind of cool to have something here where you're evaluating evidence, you're giving people kind of feedback about that. One of the things I wanted to bring up, because Lugar was kind of talking about, hold on, there were some comments. Let's just so you're not assessing if climate change is driving immigration from Arab lands in Saharan Africa. I think that was for you, Vugar. I think that was the same person that asked if that's, specifically.
Actually,
so this would be a more specific question, I guess.
Yeah, we were not assessing anything at all.
No.
Just we were trying to ask a question, to fabricate, let's say, a question, if this tool can find an article, relevant articles for because this area that we just picked up, it is not very well researched, because it is right now happening. Climate change is happening, and many countries trying to handle it. And of course, it affects the lives of the people. There is no, let's say, there are some research, there are some articles talking about this, what is happening, this phenomenon. Yes, but it is definitely open to do further research. So if I am not personally, not an expert in the field, saying that if climate change driving immigration from the Arab lands, the arid lands, Saharan or sub-Saharan Africa countries. So I am not expert in that field, but for sure you can definitely do research. If you manage, if you are in the field, definitely you can, let's say, bring up your research proposal on it if you want to work in the field as a legal scientist, let's say.
Okay, just want to give a shout out.
Question, yes.
Yeah, to some people that have been joining us late. Don't worry, this is all recorded, so you can find it on our YouTube channels. You can find it on LinkedIn after, so it'll just save the recording. So don't worry if you missed the beginning. We're still here for a little bit. One of the things I also wanted to point out is this AutoSR thing. I think that's from University of Toronto. So this is a research group, and they've published this preprint. Funny that it's a sign-up form here, but I think I actually have, it's a preprint, right? So I think it's Biomed Archive. So this is for like meta reviews, where they did a study and they just compared human to the tool that they've built. And this is specifically in the biomedical field, right? So it wouldn't apply in my field, it wouldn't apply in HCI or in other fields, where meta reviews, you kind of have to get some of the data, you have to compare the data, you have to do some sort of screening. And so basically what they did here is fast is one of their distinguishing factors, is saying, okay, here's like 8,000 hours saved for one review that we have here. And so, they kind of have this system, which I'm sure Christian and the others are commercializing this. I'm sure you're going to have to pay a huge chunk of money at some point for this. Right now, it's just a paper and it's an email capture form. But it is kind of cool to kind of see where they are going, right? So for some fields, these things are becoming pretty accurate. And here, of course, they're claiming humans are in the loop at every step, which they actually have to be, because if you don't have sort of the human assessment, then you can't really get there. So this might be the next thing, as we're seeing some of these things happening. We got consensus with a deep thing. Then we got SciSpace. This is something we also wanted to talk about. So SciSpace lets you do deep search as well. But SciSpace actually takes it one step further. So if I want to go into that, basically what consensus did with the deep search is like the deep literature search, which SciSpace has had that for a while. They had this literature review functionality here, and that kind of allowed you to do some of that stuff. But now with deep search, what I did, and I'm not going to reproduce it, it's this chat here, you're an expert grant reviewer, there's a lot of confidential information in that. But basically, I wrote a grant, and then I fed it the evaluation criteria that are on the official grant website. And I asked it to act as a peer reviewer for my grant. and with all the evaluation criteria that are there. And it produced some pretty nice feedback for my first draft of my grant that I then could use to reevaluate the grant. So, for that kind of stuff, it is actually pretty cool. But it could also be, this is something where they're also talking about with this. Let me just find the real paper for this. Just give me a hot second, Booger, if you want to comment on this while I find the paper.
Yeah, these catchy titles for the tools really, sometimes does not provide the full picture of these tools, because I don't believe that there is a tool by which you can do a full literature review in a couple of, how many hours? 100 hours? 1,000 hours? How many hours they are talking about? For me, it is not clear. And I recently completed my PhD, my dissertation, you know that, Leonard. So I tested hundreds of tools. There is no tool by which you can do the full literature review in a couple of hours. So it is not physically, mentally, in any way, it is not possible, I believe. But of course, if you leverage the power of these tools, definitely you can accelerate the process, but you still need a considerable, let's say, amount of time to do that. So these catchy titles, yes, they work in terms of the business, in terms of the attracting the people to that. But if you are really in a kind of doing a science, and there's no tool right now available on the market by which you can do, it can just, it's scraping the surface of the whole field. It's not really deep diving research. You should still need to do that.
Yeah. So, and this is the interesting thing, right? Like everyone, and I mean, this is how you sell stuff. It's a simple marketing 101 is you want to give people something that saves them time, right? Like speed beats quality if you want to sell a product. And these companies have of course, understood this very deeply. And as literature reviews and some other academic tasks just take a lot of time, this is where they're trying to pitch, right? Like this is where they're trying to pitch their product, saying, you don't like, or we're going to make some of these things easier. And, to a degree, I get that. And sometimes that is really helpful. But if you are a PhD student, if you are still learning, and you are basically, if you never learned how to walk, but you only ever ridden a bicycle, but you never actually had to walk on your feet, it would be really annoying as you're trying to figure this out. Now, and this is a bad example because riding a bicycle, you have to use your legs as well. And walking, you have to use your legs. That's probably too similar. Like maybe if you only ever drove a car versus, or sit in a wheelchair versus walking, there's a difference between the use of your feet, right? So if you never learned how to use your feet, that's probably bad to understand walking. And so that's the problem here. The only thing that you get here is some clarifying questions, and then it goes off. So if we answer those, so what's your primary focus for this poster? So we're most interested in methodology. Actually, no, we're most interested in findings because that's what usually goes on the poster. And then what's your target audience? This will be medical professionals because that's a medical paper. And then what specific aspects should be emphasized? Clinical recommendations, maybe. And that's always a good thing to emphasize. I don't think there are too many in here. And then what level of technical detail is appropriate? This is for a medical, let's say, conference. And then you've given it some side things, kind of like you do with deep research on Google and other things, and then it just goes off and does that stuff. But back to this whole example of not walking on your feet. If you never actually learned how to do the thing, and then you've always had the robot to do the thing for you. It's the same as writing, right? Like I absolutely truly enjoy how generative AI assists me with writing and how much fun that is. But if that would have been my first step, if I never would have had these 20 years of writing experience where I had to learn it the hard way first, I don't think it would be as enjoyable, because I would feel like this is lacking to me. And I do still enjoy the moments when I get to sit down with my notebook, pen and paper, and actually to write things down with my hand. Because as I tweet about very often, and I write on LinkedIn very often, writing is also thinking, right? Like as you write things, you think through things. And so this is kind of important for us to really understand, okay, I'm thinking through things. I'm getting a feel for how that works. And so that's basically the recommendation. These tools are all very cool when it comes to automating stuff. But, don't forget, if you are still in training, if you're not a 60-year-old, are those, do they still exist? 60-year-old pre-retirement prof that is now enjoying sort of the fruits of their labor, then I wouldn't recommend to shortcut everything, because it thieves the learnings from you, and that's not cool. Again, hi Ben, cool that you're here. Fell asleep. GPT-5 release is close. Okay, so we're definitely, if that comes out by the next podcast, we're definitely going to talk about GPT-5. Everyone here is very excited and scared at the same time in terms of OpenAI and like the stuff that's happening there. And then Bart was asking if we've used AS Review. My students have used it. It's definitely something we could chat about in one of the future episodes as well. And then, are there specific guidelines for citing the use of AI tools like SciSpace, especially in the context of doctoral research and dissertations? Unfortunately, this is coming from Galia. Hopefully I'm pronouncing it correctly. Unfortunately, there are not a lot of guidelines. Just yesterday, I posted on LinkedIn one of the papers that we wrote, The Great AI Witch Hunt. If you're interested in that, just Google Scholar, The Great AI Witch Hunt. It'll give you some ideas, because in that paper, we were comparing reviewers working on AI-generated text. And based on that, at the very end, we came up with some recommendations and guidelines. And so they're slowly starting to be built. People are starting to build these guidelines that hopefully make that much easier, but there are not a lot. There are some with the associations and the publishers of the journals that are providing that. The big thing is disclosure. So never use it and don't disclose it. That's just a hard no. That will get you expelled, probably will get you to fail your thesis and so forth. This is literally the biggest struggle that we have at the university, that I have as a professor when I'm teaching undergraduates, and a lot of undergraduates do not disclose AI use. Or they think just kind of saying, hey, but I've used ChatGPT, and then it's just like one line, I've used ChatGPT for it, is going to be enough. Well, let me tell you what, it's not enough. If you're using a tool to get your thinking done, the least you can do is walk me through the steps. Because a lot of the times what I will find out, and this is not grad work, like grad work, a lot of the times they have learned and they're getting better at it. But in undergrad work, a lot of what I see is just like a very simple prompt. They haven't even taken the time to unbundle the task that I'm giving them. And this is something that we talk about in prompt engineering a lot, is like, you kind of have to break down the task into subtasks. This is why prompt engineering is actually so close to game design, which is to my heart because I've studied games for so long. In game design, what you have to do to make something interesting is you have to take a task and then you have to break that task down into subtasks. This is how World of Warcraft and some of these games work. You kind of have something, a big goal, and you break that down into subtasks. And in prompt engineering, in the same way, you have to take something that you want to achieve, and then you want to break it down into subtasks. Any programmer in the audience will know that from programming as well. And programming works the same way. If you're creating an algorithm, you kind of have to break down all of the steps there. And here you just do it just with natural language. So, that's kind of the trick there. And then, of course, if I were to use something like that, hopefully with an elaborate prompt, what I would do is, of course, I'd have to disclose how that is done. And so this is definitely a recommendation that I would give if you're still in doctoral training and you're using it for that. That would be something important. Thank you. Valeria is saying that example was actually kind of good with a bike. It's not training wheels, more like gears for your bike. You still need to learn and know how to ride the bike. That's an even better example than the example that I gave, right? Like, so yeah, so all of these things are kind of part of the whole thing. As you can see, this is still hard at work here.
It will take more time, I believe, because in my case, it took around 1 hour. I asked the question.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It took 1 hour to generate the whole PDF in the end.
Yeah.
And that's why maybe you can.
Yeah. I'm going to have to come back to that in the next episode and kind of look at the output.
Episode, maybe we can.
Going to take
but I think, but for today, we can. So maybe until the end of today's episode, we can see, but I don't think so.
No, I think what we should do is we should pop back into ChatGPT that we started at the beginning of the episode.
And yes,
and see if it's still, it's still working. I just checked.
That is one of the biggest things happened, yes, in last days. I think we should definitely cover, but it will take more time. So this agent will take. And one last question, maybe I think it is a very natural question. No one asked it, but maybe I should ask it now. Why not using, let's say, the other front runner AI tools agents rather than the agent of the SciSpace?
Why that's exactly the question. I think they actually have it on their website. Let me just see my blog. Oh, they don't have a blog. Oh man, it was so nice when things were easy to find, but now I can't actually. Yeah, no. So once you're logged into SciSpace, you can't really get out of it. Come on. Okay, so somewhere on their website, they had that comparison with GenSpark and Manus because they have to compare it to that, right? Because those are the competing tools. And it's more fine-tuned to academic tasks, which I get. Didn't really convince me yet. I think it's nice for people that already have a subscription because you get X amount of credits. You can buy extra credits for doing this kind of stuff. But yeah, at the end of the day, and I mean, it's the same interesting thing that you get when you're doing the deep search with consensus. So one of the things with SciSpace that I like is it's very comprehensive, right? Like it's trying to do like very comprehensive tasks for you. It's like a very big kind of thing. And oftentimes I don't need that. Oftentimes I just need something that's a little bit speedier, but good enough. And this is kind of where consensus finds like a better balance, I think, in this case, because it gives you a little bit of this, there's like a nice output there, and then it gives you that overview. But it's also, again, that also limits its functionality. So gives you something really quickly, but it's something like very specific. And if you don't need that thing, it's not going to give you the result that you need. With the SciSpace agent, because it's an agent, it gives you like so much more, right? Like it can generate a worksheet, it can generate slides, it can generate a full-on literature review, whatever have you, right? The mind is the limit here. But that's the same as with, if I can switch this up again to my other window, just give me a second here. Whoop. So in my other window, we still have ChatGPT running. So it's the same idea as the ChatGPT agent, right? Like it's really thorough. It really like goes about the thing that you want to do. But as you can see, it also really takes quite the long time. And in this case, I think it's already generated something like here. It has generated this report. Let's see if I reload, if it already has produced it. Because again, the thing is, sometimes if you like step out of it, oh yeah, here it is. If you step out of it, it will also not finish. I think this is like a JavaScript thing or whatever, and then it will not finish. But then once you reload, it actually has finished. So in this case, ChatGPT agent is done. We asked it to find arguments for safe superintelligence based on what we heard about Ilya Sutskever and the Meta offer that he turned down for safe intelligence. Also, like, Wooger, do you ever think like what is actually happening with these people like making that much money that quickly with this AI stuff? This also, I think, a really big risk because there's so much money involved in some of this stuff in terms of like maybe corrupting somebody. I don't know. It's a wild guess, but like I'm a little worried about that sometimes. Anyway, so here it has this table of arguments for safe superintelligence and their strength, and that's actually pretty good because alignment, instrumental convergence, maximizing, AI will develop sub-goals like self-preservation, resource acquisition, and then it has the examples that it picks from Wikipedia and somewhere else. So again, for academics, yeah, nice examples, but again, it's more like a journalistic query that's going on here. And yeah, it's quite interesting. But if you wanted to do a deep search for an article that you're writing as a journalist, I think this is absolutely fantastic, right? Like this is the kind of stuff that would take you a long time, probably take you a day to put together this list of arguments for your article. But now you have them all together with nice little links in it. And then you even have starter points here, right? Like why are some of these arguments convincing? And yeah, it actually cites the people that have made that argument. And so this makes for an excellent, absolutely excellent draft that you could take and write about. And even if you're, online creator or whatever, you could use this as a start that you could do. We got one more question from Ben. Can I ask, please, do you have some sort of prompt engineering guide? If so, I would love to aid with it and share my experience. For example, deep research, being good at writing in JSON format or prompt engineering format by the OpenAI co-founder. Of course, you may have it there, but would like to check it out. There's an idea for our next product. What we do have right now, so this is like an excellent prompt. What we do have right now for people that have missed this thing on the top here that we had. Oh, now I've removed this other thing. That's fine. I'm just going to hide this as well. Is we do have this wonderful webinar for people that are interested that we're working on updating right now. That is currently only limited by Leonard's ability to not clone himself and work on a simple intake form. But we do have the existing webinar still that if you're interested in that you can still buy. Is something we recorded last year as these AI tools came out and we were just kind of working with it. And of course, now as we're doing this podcast and we're working a lot with these tools, we are, of course, super interested in updating it as well. And yeah, so that's something, if you're interested in that, this is a great way to get into it. It's super cheap. and just something that makes it really easy to get started with some of these academic AI tools. Right, Booger?
Yes, definitely. The prompt engineering part of that webinar is still relevant, and I think
That's
will be
true.
relevant
I
as
did talk
well.
about that a bit, didn't I?
Yes,
Definitely spent
and
like,
yeah, and not little bit, but I think we dedicated
yeah,
quite some time to it, and you went
yeah,
really into almost
yeah,
all details to explain how you can be a real good prompt engineer. By, of course, we are limited in terms of the academic stuff, but you covered all of that. And in terms of the tools part, of course, some of the the interface changed, but the
yeah.
underlying principles are still there. And we will definitely we will have a nice surprise for those who are purchasing this webinar. But
Of course.
actually,
Yes.
I think I don't see any harm saying that more than hundreds of people bought our
Yeah.
webinar until now, and we will definitely have a nice surprise for those who are purchasing this one, and we will be coming back with a nice update. But one final question for you, Leonard, in terms of the
Yeah.
ChatGPT. I think we are over 1 hour now, but
Yeah, we
this is
gotta
definitely a
wrap up.
final, yes, final one.
Yeah.
So, what do you think? Will this new development, adding this learn for study function to the ChatGPT, will at least change the ideas of the schools or teachers or professors, kind of giving them kind of like this feeling that ChatGPT is now it does have this function. If they use this function, the answers will be more. So I have a feeling instead of getting, so I tested this study and learn, let's say, feature, kind of pushing students to learn more and
Yeah.
themselves rather than giving the answer right away. Yeah? Because we expect, as you say in the
Yeah.
beginning,
Yeah.
like we are now coining a new term. So
Yeah.
we will
Study and
ask
learn.
them,
We didn't even have,
yeah,
yeah, we didn't even have time to go through study and learn. We got so caught up
yes,
in all this
or
other
maybe
stuff.
we can, if you
Yeah.
don't for today's, maybe we can cover whole this because it's big. It's really big. I watched the person who is behind the whole this project, and maybe we can discuss this time and this feature of the ChatGPT next time. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we definitely we got to talk about it, and we got to talk about it next time. I do think it's super relevant. It's definitely something that is worth bringing up, making explicit here.
Yes.
So
Next
we'll
time,
talk
then we
about it
will do
next
that.
time. But just to give it a little teaser, explain the topic of safe super intelligence to me. Did I spell that wrong? I don't know. But yeah, basically the system prompt for it was leaked, and I actually put that system prompt into Gemini and Claude as well. And it's interesting because you can enable study mode, of course, through that project then in Gemini and Claude. And I'll show you in the next episode, we'll talk about that as well. But it's really nice, gives you kind of a little bit of an overview here. AGI is, of course, the related idea here. The safety concerns, what does safe mean, kind of brings up some of that stuff, what's currently being done, and some of that other stuff. The nice thing is about study mode, it basically tells you, okay, so where do we go from here? And it cues you into action, right? And then you kind of start with this helpful tutor to get all of these ideas. And yeah, again, I think that is something that can definitely be helpful.
Yeah.
But that was just a teaser. We're out of time because we got real jobs and other things to do. So thank you very much. If you have enjoyed this episode, if you want more content like this, there are 3 quick things that you can do to support the show. First, you can hit subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. It takes just a second, but it makes a huge difference for us, and it helps others discover the show. Second, if you value what we discussed today, please leave a rating or a review on our YouTube channels. Your feedback helps us improve the show, and it helps new listeners find us. Finally, if you want, connect with us on social media where we share AI insights that you won't find anywhere else. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you for the great presentation today again, Leonard, and chatting you next time.
See ya.